Hi guys! Today we're going to be learning about perhaps one of the most important documents in the history of England. It's called the Magna Carta. So that is our title for today. How did the Magna Carta change England? And for your starter, I'm asking you a bit of a strange question. Why should we control how much power the monarch, so the king or queen, has? So why should we control how much power a king has? And bonus point, if anyone can give me any historical examples in the chat of where maybe a king has had too much power or too little power and bad things have happened. So pause the video and do the date, title and task, please. So the first thing we're going to do is think about what should a king actually be like. Now you're all going to have your own different opinions, so I would pause the video now and just jot down maybe 5 or 6 things you think a king, as leader of a country, what should they be like? So pause the video and have a go at answering that question. So some of the things people have come up with in previous lessons are things like reliable, they've got to be trustworthy, strong, you've got to have a king that's going to protect the nation, rich, because they've got to pay for the nation, nice, it's important to have a king that you get along with, generous, so that goes hand in hand with being rich, I guess, they've got to be generous and give out their money to those less fortunate than themselves. Happy. Again, they've got to be a nice person, good temperament, not too angry. And someone once talked about being married, and I've just really liked that because they've obviously studied Henry VIII, but it is important that a king should be married, so then he can have children that will follow him as king, and therefore it's not a big scary time when the king dies because they don't know who's going to lead them. So feel free just to add any from mine that you missed out on. No worries if not. Okay, so the Magna Carta is the focus of our lesson today, and it just translates as Great Charter. It's just a Latin name for the same thing. Now, it's a list of rights for all citizens, including the king. But this means a king is subject to the law. So if a king murders someone, he has to go to court. If a king steals bread, he has to go to court. Because before the Magna Carta, the king could do whatever he wanted. It didn't matter, he could murder everyone, he could steal all the bread in the land if he wanted, and nothing would happen to him because he's the king. Now, the king thought that was fine because he was appointed as king by God. So really, what was the issue? And that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at how the Magna Carta happened, like how it came about. Because again, we're still using some basis of this document today in our laws. So you might just want to pause the video and get down the subheading and bullet points for me, please. Okay, we're going to watch a video in a moment, but before we do, you're going to need to be answering those questions. And were we in the lesson, I had these printed for you, but here we are. So if you wouldn't mind just copying these questions down, and you'll need to leave a line to answer them. They're only roughly one-word answers, apart from number 3, so you might want to leave a little bit of extra room for number 3, but otherwise a line should be plenty of room. So pause the video and just copy down these questions. You won't be able to answer them yet. Okay, so I have posted a link to this video in the Teams chat, and you're gonna need to watch the video twice. I always recommend that. The first time you watch it, you should just be kind of taking it in and following the story, and then it's the second time where you should be attempting to answer those questions. So it's about a 5-minute video, so this is probably going to take you about 10 minutes to do this task. So pause this video, start the next video, watch it twice, and then answer the questions you've just written down. And we'll see how many you can get. If you get all 10, you can have an achievement point. Okay, so let's see these answers. So the Magna Carta, this great charter, is signed in 1215. The worst king in history is King John, and he's described as this for many reasons. He imprisoned his wife, he starved his opponents, he murdered his own nephew, he annoyed the Irish, he rise taxes, increased taxes, and punished those who refused to pay. So the barons, and if you remember, the barons are in our feudal system the second from the top, so they're very important landowners. And the barons want King John, to obey the law because that makes sense. But then John refuses, and the barons actually take over London. So the two sides meet at a place called Runnymede, which is actually only about an hour from here. It's not very exciting, I'm not going to lie, it's literally just a field, but whatever floats your boat. And that is where the Magna Carta is signed, at Runnymede. So what section is still used today? So the one that gives all free men a fair trial. So if you're ever accused of a crime, it goes through a proper trial where people assess your guilt or your innocence, and that's fair. So that's a good thing that we still have that today. However, the original Magna Carta actually doesn't apply to most people because peasants weren't free. So where it says free men were given a fair trial, that basically just meant rich men would have a fair trial. Peasants didn't. They were just, fined, or if you remember that really weird punishment of being sewn up into a deer if they're caught hunting on rich people's land. And the Magna Carta lives on for 800 years, but again, we still use bits of it today in our lawmaking. So, to summarise all of that, because that's quite a lot of information in one go, the king was meant to listen to his barons and follow some of the laws of the land. That's what he as king was meant to do. However, he did not. Instead, he raised taxes, lost lots of wars, and was generally mean. So the barons got angry and forced John to sign the Magna Carta or lose his crown. There's a bit of an ultimatum, really. You do this or you will no longer be king. So again, you're going to need to get this down. So pause the video. I would do yourself a little subheading just so you don't get confused, and then just use those 3 points to summarise the Magna Carta. So then, to recap, what does it actually do? This means every single person in England, including the king, has to follow the law. And you need to explain why this is significant. Why is this important? Why is this a big deal that even the king now has to follow the laws of England? And you'll get a bonus point if you can link in Thomas Becket's murder from last lesson as an example. If you can pop that in the chat, I'll give you an achievement point there and then. So why is it an important event that the king now has to follow the law of England? Let's look at some examples of what the Magna Carta actually does. Now, there's 3 main ones I'd like to draw your attention to. The Crown cannot limit the Church's freedom, and that's massive. So The king can't stop the church. So at this point, the church has got a lot of power. So before the Magna Carta, it was undefined, like it wasn't really talked about. But in the Magna Carta, the king cannot tell the church what to do. It also gave free people the right to a fair trial, whereas before you could be imprisoned for no reason. And crucially, barons cannot be forced to pay money unless agreed by all. But before, they could be forced to pay that money. So you're going to need to pause the video and then get down those bullet points for me and have a go at that challenge. So which is the most significant, which is the most important thing that the Magna Carta does and why? So pause the video and get those points down. Okay, so this is the last task of the lesson to prove that you have learnt everything you needed. And we're going to be looking at how did the Magna Carta change England? In order to look at change, you have to look at before, during, and after, or it doesn't make sense. And if you want an extra challenge, try using the key historical terminology of how far the Magna Carta changed England. And you've really got three options with that. It completely changes England, it somewhat changes England, or it doesn't change England at all. And in order to make this judgment, you need to think about how many people it affected, how much it affected them, and how long for. So in terms of structure, the green parts are kind of paragraphs, and this is what I would suggest talking about in each paragraph. So before the Magna Carta, what could the king do? Who had more power? How was the king using this power? For your second paragraph, you need to talk about what the Magna Carta actually does. So what laws does it make? Who has to follow them? Why have they got to follow them? And for after, you could think about, would it make England fairer? And how? I mean, can you see any problems with this? And have you got any evidence that these changes lasted a long time? I mean, spoilers, you do, it was in the video. So make sure you try and get that fact in if you can. Okay? So this is your final task. It's probably going to take about 10 minutes. So that kind of tells you how much detail I'm expecting. I'm expecting a lot of facts and key information. Try and use as much knowledge from this lesson as you can. So pause the video, have a go at that question, and I will see you soon. Bye.